Chicopee, Massachusetts. It's called the Crossroads of New England. It's also one of the most important cities in golf. But its history dates back over 2 centuries.
You know, the reason there's an industrial corridor up and down the Connecticut River Valley here is because of the establishment of the Springfield Armory in Springfield at the end of the Revolutionary War.
A lot of our employees, when I first started working here, were servicemen who moved down here.
That's why the Spalding Company came here in the late 1890s, because there was such an established base of skilled workers.
We've been making golf balls here longer than just about anywhere in the world.
The ball that changed a town. The story of the Chicopee golf ball plant.
My earliest memory of the Chicopee golf ball plant was picking my dad up from work when I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
My birth announcement was in the magazine that they used to have here because my father worked for Spalding for 40-something years.
If you talk to people in the city of Chicopee or the surrounding community and you tell them that you work here, invariably someone will say, oh, my uncle worked there.
Oh, is that the old Spalding plant? I used to work there.
At one point, Vinny's father actually reported to my father, and now I report to Vince, so it's kind of karma.
The 1980s saw major growth for both the Spalding Company and the Chicopee golf ball plant. It certainly was a period of good times and economic success for the town and its people.
The 80s here were really good. I mean, it was probably the boom time for Spalding in the area.
We couldn't make balls fast enough. We couldn't make machines fast enough to make golf balls fast enough. At one point in time, we were doing well over 1 million golf balls per day.
We were getting the NBA contract. Golf ball market share was neck and neck on a unit standpoint with Titleist. 70% of the golf balls that were made in the world were made in Massachusetts between the 2 companies. So the 80s were really good.
In the 1990s, it was split. It was the first half and the second half. And the first half was again continued rapid growth.
Meanwhile, on the West Coast in Southern California, Callaway Golf was basking in the glow of Big Bertha. The 90s would bring win after win and unprecedented success. But the Carlsbad-based company wanted more.
I started in late 95. Mr. Callaway obviously was still there. Chuck Yash called me into his office and he said, Patrick, hey, we're going to get into the ball business and I need your help running some scenarios.
It was a golf article, and they were showcasing the facade of the new ball plant that they had built. And I remember sitting with a bunch of the engineers at the time and looking at that and thinking, wow, we're in trouble.
To think of Callaway Golf coming into the business as a dedicated golf company, developing really cool, new, innovative stuff, it was viewed internally here as a significant threat and something we better pay attention to.
So golf ball was crazy at the end of 1999, early 2000s, partly because we had just moved in to the new headquarters facility, which was a golf ball manufacturing plant at the time. There was a lot of collaboration, a lot of, hey, what can we do differently in the golf ball business? And that was really all the way up to Ely Callaway and, Mr. Helmstetter.
Ely was willing to go and ask questions where people knew. There was an understanding of why things were done, but Ely wanted to prove that.
He would walk up to each test we were doing and ask what we were doing, what we were trying to figure out, what data we had collected so far, and whether that, showed that the product was going to be successful or not.
Even though you were presenting data, he wanted to be able to understand how that affected the golfer and how they would perceive the product while they played it. And so we actually manufactured a bunch of golf balls that were completely smooth. And then we went out to the range and we hit them. And they were knuckleballs. You need a dimple. But he wanted people to understand that and to prove to him why they were necessary.
And Jeff Colton was running the test center, and he came up to me. I was sitting in my cube. He goes, "Hey, I need you to hit some balls. We're bringing some new prototypes down here at the golf ball, and I want you to take a couple of drivers, and we'll take a look and see how it goes." And I'm like, "Oh, great, cool."
He didn't really know. He knew it was a prototype ball, but not much more than that. He thought he was just going to be hitting it, I think.
And I went down there and had my glove and my golf shoes on, and I'm ready to test. I'm looking forward to it. And I see Mr. H and Mr. C are down there. I'm like, oh boy, what are these guys doing here? And so I realized, of course, they're going to watch me hit the golf ball. And so immediately it was like walking to the first day of the U.S. Open. What was going to be fun and kind of interesting was now I was petrified.
Either Colton or Luke told him that make sure you hit it straight, because these are like 5,000 a piece, these balls. And once that happened, there's zero chance he was going to hit it straight.
I'm sitting there standing over the golf ball, and I can just feel Mr. C's presence right behind me. I mean, I can feel just like laser beams, he's watching me. And I can't feel anything from the neck down at this point. And I take it back, the club disappears, and now I'm just praying that I get back to the ball and make contact. And it's like, bang, contact. And it's like, all right, I hit it good. And I look up, and I just in time to see it sail over the fence to the left into the gunch. Long story short, I actually do hit a couple that find the driving range. He goes, you know what, I think we've got enough good data with this. That looks great. Thanks for your help making everything. I'm like, thank God he let me go.
The early 2000s brought different challenges to both coasts. Could the Chicopee plant evolve, or would it be left behind? Could Callaway find success in a new category?
We were scaling up to launch our first product in March of 2000, the Rule 35. So there was a lot of pressure on a lot of teams, manufacturing in particular, R&D as well.
Right before the launch, we needed to produce a lot of golf balls, and it was a matter of things not operating exactly the way that we had originally thought. And so literally the folks from the offices, the folks from R&D, those of us in engineering, were on the floor working, running equipment, putting balls in boxes by hand, and just making sure that we did whatever it took in order to produce Rule 35 and get it out the door.
The product was so well received that people wanted it, and we were having a really challenging time manufacturing it. Part of the reason is it's very cost ineffective to manufacture in California.
Obviously, being the finance guy, that wasn't our first suggestion, was to make golf balls in Carlsbad, which was pretty high cost. But I think Chuck and Ely were adamant about, hey, we are a Southern California Carlsbad company, and we should do the plant here.
We were spending a ton of money. They're having rolling blackouts through San Diego, and they're trying to conserve energy and cost, and it was going through the roof. And so we were struggling from day one to keep up with demand, and it ended up leading to kind of a few consecutive years of layoffs and downsizing, and eventually the ball business became more absorbed with the main business as well.
Things went from challenging to worse in Chicopee. A place that had done so much was now reduced to being sold.
Up until 1995 or 1996, we were still owned by the same company.
Spalding was sold to KKR. That didn't go so well over the next decade.
They were good folks. They were good businessmen, but they were put in a position where they really couldn't succeed. So it was a slow decline, frankly, from 96 onward until the early 2000s, when it became very apparent that the product line and the debt ceiling that we were under was just not serviceable.
A lot of poor decisions were made that took our business from being up here among the leaders down to where we were available for sale.
In June of 2003, there was officially declared bankruptcy, and that's when everything began to change. The company was divided essentially into two: the golf assets and the non-golf assets, or team sports. The golf assets remaining, meaning the building, the machinery, the intellectual property, the patents, the trademarks, names, except brand names. That was put out for public auction, and we heard rumors that it was going to be primarily a bidding war between Callaway and TaylorMade.
What do you remember hearing about interest that Callaway had potentially in the Spalding Golf Ball Company?
Yeah, we knew that we had to do something. At the end, in 2002, I remember, I wasn't involved in the meetings, but I remember Ron Drapeau was our CEO at the time, and I remember him saying to the Wall Street investors, we're going to turn a profit, or we're going to eliminate losses for golf ball by 2003. So as 2003 was kind of approaching, it was, well, how are we going to do that? There was a lot of speculation that we would just get out of the business entirely. But so when the Spalding Top Flight kind of bankruptcy situation happened, and there was going to be this bidding, there was a lot of excitement, hey, maybe this is our chance to kind of do away with the California manufacturing model and send production over to Massachusetts and make our products there.
By the time you get to the 2000s, right, when Rule 35 came out, there was a minefield of patents, right? And Titleist obviously had been in the golf ball business forever. Spalding created the two-piece business in the States. Bridgestone had been making balls, since the 40s. And really, every time you turned, on a design path, you were running into one of those three companies' patents.
We knew that Callaway was in a position where the golf ball business was struggling, and that we had an opportunity here, given our technology and equipment, et cetera, to solve that problem.
So Ron Drapeau and Steve McCracken went off to New York, where the official bid was. We were sitting upstairs here in headquarters, and we were sitting around a conference room, and the way the process worked was you placed a bid, and then the competing bidder actually had an hour to respond to the bid. And very quickly, Ron's strategy was to try and wear TaylorMade down.
Mark Leposki was a part of the TaylorMade bid.
After we would place a bid, Callaway would wait for about 59 minutes and 59 seconds and then place their bid.
And it's probably 11 o'clock at night, here, almost midnight, and we're only like 8 bids in.
We were rooting for Callaway. The rumors on the street were with TaylorMade were not necessarily as promising for the Chicopee site as if Callaway had taken us.
And I can remember it like it was yesterday, walking in to work. I forget the exact date. It might have been late August, early September, where I ran into my boss at the time, and he told me, "Did you hear who prevailed in the auction?" I said, "Nope." And he said it was Callaway Golf, and it was frankly a big sigh of relief.
The purchase price was just over $180 million. I think it was $182. But in that purchase price, there were over $90 million of accounts receivables and inventory that we turned into cash within 4 months. So you're talking about a $90 million purchase for the two brands, and then obviously the plant and the IP. Now, ultimately, we sold the two brands in the mid to late 2000s for $25 million. So when you start netting that together, you're talking about 55 to 60 million for this plant and this IP, which really has now built a ball business in Callaway that's over 200 million. So I'd like to think that we got an okay deal there as you start netting things out.
In 2012, Chip Brewer was named CEO of Callaway, and the Chicopee golf ball plant was at a crossroads. Should Callaway keep making golf balls there, or shut it down and move golf ball operations to another country?
Yeah, I remember not long after Chip arrived that we had a video conference, and some plan had already been part baked that we were going to maybe shut Chicopee completely and move all of our ball operations to Mexico.
We always thought that it made sense to make the balls here because of the experience of the people, because of our history here.
It just didn't make any sense to me at that point. And I simply said, no, it doesn't make sense right now, and we're gonna pause on that and reevaluate. And
luckily for Brewer, he hired someone with a clear direction for the facility, Mark Leposki.
I've had a vision ever since I first saw the plant in 2003 of what the Chicopee manufacturing operation could be.
In 2012, when Mark Leposki came on board, we set to work on re-engineering the supply chain here, which included a re-layout of the Chicopee facility.
So while the crisis was averted, there still were many challenges. Could the answer be as simple as making a golf ball that is softer?
Yeah, Super Soft, I think, was the product that turned the golf ball operation around, because it gave us a foothold in the market. It was a ball people really wanted out there.
It was like a whoa. I think people had never necessarily felt a product that was that soft, and it has a very distinct sound and feel. Ultimately, what we came out with, I think, was really what we would call DSPD, demonstrably superior, pleasingly different.
So when we saw that, the next logical play was to begin working on how we could leverage that platform into more of a player's ball. What could we do to kind of shift the paradigm at the top end of the market?
As we went into the late stages of our development, we still felt like we were missing something, and it wasn't until I think we actually took the balls out and started testing with Phil Mickelson. He actually got some of the samples ahead of time.
The first time I ever received the Chrome Soft golf ball, Harry Arnett gave them to me. I went up to the bridges. It was a cold day, and I remember hitting them, and they were going 6, 8, 10 yards longer with every iron across the board, and it was so much easier to compress that the ball went straighter as well.
And he came back raving, saying, wait a minute, I can hit shots with this golf ball of a type that I've never been able to hit before, shots that I want to hit, shots that are creative around the green, shots that still are long off the tee and in my mid-irons. He has a great sense of how his equipment can benefit his game, and suddenly we thought we were onto something.
And before you know it, he's raving. He's telling everybody about him.
I thought that this ball was such a game changer. We should have sold it for $100 a dozen. I just thought that it is so noticeably better and different.
Before I know it, I'm getting emails, calls, golf shop, everybody else. I'm like, what in the heck is he talking about? But he loved the ball.
When ChromeSoft was introduced, it had, and I was surprised, it had instant credibility. It was accepted by the golfer of all levels very quickly, and I was really surprised on how quickly it took in the market.
Designing a new golf ball creates challenges for the plant. It needed to keep up with the times in order to make a ball unlike any other before it.
We were continuing to manufacture golf balls, as many as we could possibly make, with equipment that had seen better days. It had aged out, and it was at that point in time that we knew that we needed to continue to push hard and develop and invest in the machinery in the factory.
It was originally a $30 million commitment, which is subsequently is well documented now a $50 million commitment as we continually found more opportunities that to invest in the facility. But it gives us a competitive advantage in the marketplace to make the best golf ball.
The capital expansion and the investment here in the Chicopee facility started at the beginning. Everybody knows that every golf ball in the world is made with a synthetic rubber that's mixed inside of an internal mixer. The mixing technologies that we had were okay, but not the best. And again, we knew we needed to invest and get better, so we started a process of looking all around the world as to who made the best equipment. And we ran trials in Asia, we ran trials in North America and Europe, and finally settled on a machine that we believe is to be the state of the art. It allows us to continue to push the design space because it is a more accurate method of combining materials that make the softest, fastest golf ball cores in the world. It comes down to precision equipment. Everything is controlled, closed loop, and so the engineers know exactly what's going in, when it's going in, and how it's being combined.
The way that we can control the rubber mixing gives us the ability to alter the recipe in very subtle ways that give us performance advantages we've never had before.
Three-dimensional X-ray ensures that the cores that we're making are perfectly centered within either the cover layers or cores within cores for dual core designs. By X-raying 100% of the product going through the building, we have 100% confidence that the golf ball will perform as the design is intended. We actually use robotically controlled handling mechanisms and X-ray simultaneously from multiple axes in order to get a true three-dimensional representation of the core centering, which is, as far as we know, industry first.
The reinvestment allowed the workforce to more than triple, ensuring that generation after generation would still have jobs.
Because the company went through some difficult times and it's a union shop, only the most senior employees managed to kind of make their way through the downsizing efforts of the 2010-2011. At the low point, we were less than 125 full-time employees, which was a considerable change from the heyday of, the 90s. And it had an effect overall on the people, but we knew that we were doing the right things to grow the business back. And so as our share gains came to fruition, the best part of it, I believe, is that we began to hire people back. But we've also hired in a whole bunch of new employees. And so we essentially have two distinct populations of workers in our factory right now. We have the workers who have 25 plus years of experience, and we have workers that have, as short as a couple of days of experience. And we're kind of blending those two populations together, where the new folks are learning from the more senior team, and bring a new sense of energy and commitment to the business. So it's super exciting to see because we're kind of building the next generation of long tenured employees here right now.
So while the investment in the factory is complete, the commitment to the community is going to be felt for decades to come.
As we began to invest back in the factory here, that has a residual economic impact in the community. We work very closely with local officials and local trade schools to ensure that we have a really strong pipeline of skilled employees coming into our building, and it's been a great, great partnership. So as we come to the end of this multi-year capital investment, we're very confident that the equipment that we have here is state-of-the-art, the most modern golf ball manufacturing equipment available to any manufacturer in the world. Having been through several manufacturing plants, I am 100% confident that the Chicopee golf ball facility is the most advanced, technologically capable golf ball manufacturing plant in the globe, period.
Like most great golf masterpieces, the Chicopee golf ball plant has evolved. It's gone from a turn-of-the-century industrial power to the most modern golf ball facility in the world. What hasn't changed is the spirit of its workforce and the impact on a New England manufacturing town.